Hello riding people. So I've had my Beeline a little while now and I've had the chance to use it in anger. And overall I'm very happy with the Beeline and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. But there are some caveats and ways in which it could be better, so stick around and I'll show you what I mean. I bought the unit from Amazon for $179. Since then I've also bought the carry case and 2 bar clamps directly from Beeline themselves. The carry case is large enough to carry the charging lead and the Beeline device, and the clamps look and feel nicely made and arrive from England pretty quickly. I have a clamp fitted to my GSA which sits pretty perfectly actually, and another on my Rocket 3, but the angle of the bars could be a little bit better. So most of the time I'm using the sticky mount on the brake reservoir. That mount comes as standard, as does the elasticated mount, which also works extremely well and helps when moving from bike to bike. Initial impressions were good in terms of it performing pretty reliably, and creating routes in the app itself is absolute child's play. In the first month of ownership, I used it on 4 200 mile plus rides, and that highlighted a couple of opportunities for improvement. I reported 2 anomalies to Beeline. Firstly, routes cannot be shared between friends who own Beelines on group rides. An option to airdrop between iPhones, for instance, would be ideal. Secondly, the waypoints of imported GPX routes cannot be further manipulated in Beeline, and as source maps do differ, that would certainly help resolve any obvious anomalies in any imported GPX files. And I received a really nice response from Matthew Breslin, who is the head of customer support at Beeline, and he said, "You'll be glad to hear that not only are we aware of both issues, we are actively working to get them sorted for our next large version update of the app." Now Matthew didn't provide an ETA, but it is nice to know that they are on the case and intend to resolve both issues within the next major release to Beeline users. However, a few weeks ago I rode a 1,000-mile long weekend to Virginia and back, and that highlighted a few opportunities for improvement. That weekend I created GPX route files via the popular MyRoute App website using Garmin base map known as Here and a Google map overlay with all the waypoints checked at 100% zoom. Although Beeline worked pretty well for 95% of the 1,000 miles, it did highlight 2 other issues. Firstly, parts of the route visually toggle from route to compass mode, but where the route became a straight line, Beeline would not navigate via either method. It just requested a U-turn until after later waypoints were passed, when the route mode then returned. Secondly, the route suddenly decided to deviate in some parts to a visually spurious waypoint not on the source GPX that appears to go into the ocean or other countries entirely. At first I thought the problems might be intrinsic to the MyRoute App website, and so I recreated the route using the My Maps area of the Google Maps website and generated a new GPX via the GPS Visualizer website. But when imported to Beeline, that displayed similar anomalies. But then I found out some key information. I had read that the Beeline uses Google Maps for navigation, and that is true, but only for its Velo device, which targets bicycle riders. The Beeline Moto device for motorcyclists actually uses a base map supplied to them by a company called Mapbox. And from what I can gather, Mapbox is an enabler who supplies OpenStreetMap or OSM format maps to developers, who can then create their own layers on top of that. A layer is basically the detail information of the local surroundings and points of interest, which can help distinguish them from other navigation developing suppliers. Anyway, fortunately I have a lifetime license with the MyRoute App website, and they support both OSM base and overlay maps. But the same type of map is still sometimes not comparing apples with apples, because it depends what version of the base map each company are using. i.e., if Beeline and MyRoute App are using the same version of OpenStreetMap, then theoretically they're always in perfect sync. But if they're not, then there will be slight anomalies from time to time depending on where you place your waypoints. However, I created a route in MyRoute App using the OpenStreetMap for last weekend's ride out. That was around 230 miles and was very complicated in places and featured about 70 waypoints in total. And I'm pleased to say that the Beeline worked faultlessly, including navigating perfectly where previously it had been a bit of a Bermuda Triangle when using a Google Map base for planning. So very encouraging overall, and I do hope that continues using the OSM or OpenStreetMap for planning on the Beeline. Since reaching out to Beeline, I've sent them a second comms highlighting that although keeping the beautiful simplicity of Beeline is of course paramount, other niceties would be nice. Firstly, a way to highlight when a stop location has been reached without producing multiple route files. Example, this can be achieved in Garmin Base Camp, for instance, by toggling all stop waypoints to notify on arrival and all other waypoints to do not notify. Secondly, automatic rerouting for imported GPX files when geographically closer to the next waypoint en route than the one missed would be nice. Thirdly, an option to manually skip the next waypoint via a button press when using imported GPX rather than app-created routes would also be useful. And finally, a web interface library for planning and route saving that syncs with the mobile app perfectly. MyRoute App website does this with its sister navigation phone app using the Here or Garmin map, but can be unreliable in practice, I've found. So that was about 10 days ago and Beeline have not responded to me yet. I think it's kind of like the easiest thing in the world to turn the other cheek when you spot improvement opportunities with products you own. But if you can spot the obvious things that are inherently wrong or could be better, then I'd urge you to reach out to the maker because their products are only as good as the feedback they receive. So if we want to have consistency between our devices and we want less work to do when planning convoluted bespoke routes, it's what we all should do really. So I've highlighted a couple of things that really do need to be addressed, and Beeline have confirmed that they're already planning for their next big release. And I've highlighted some nice to haves but are no real deal breakers. Some will not like Beeline because it doesn't give them a 7-inch digital map, bark directions in their ears, or tell them their lean angle at what altitudes, or provide a pretty graphic of a motorcycle to remind them what it is they're actually doing. But others will love the no-nonsense, all-killer and no-filler approach. It's as discreet as a watch face, it doesn't mess with the aesthetics of your beautiful machine, and it just tells you where to go and when. It's priced somewhere between a cheap phone app and a full-feature GPS. Personally, I think that Garmin and TomTom devices cost too much, and most phone apps have serious flaws, plus some of you might not even have a waterproof phone. The Beeline occupies that sweet spot somewhere in the middle, and rumour has it Goldilocks has one on a Panigale V4. Finally, a big shout out to a ride-on subscriber, Stephen, who I met at Two Wheels as Such as last weekend. It's always nice to meet and hear from subscribers, so if you ever see me out and about, do come up and say hello. It's always my pleasure to meet you. Take care.
Hey you, if you want to become one of the ride-on people, don't forget to subscribe. Ride often, ride carefully, ride on.